in this episode.
And
where was it for those 2 hours? What was it doing for 2 hours?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I said, "What's in that? What's over here?" And she said, "There's a chair there in the corner." And I was like, "Oh my gosh!" She goes, "Yeah, it's a rocking chair." I was like,
Oh,
"Of
come
course,
on,
it's
yeah,
a freaking rocking chair."
No. Rocking
So,
Welcome. You're listening to Paleo Cheese Podcast, episode 36, Grief, Fear, and Therapeutic Writing with Laurel Hightower.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jeremiah Bannister.
and I'm Chad Lutsky.
And you are listening to Paleo Cheese Podcast, part of the Project Entertainment Network. And Chad, as people can see already, right? We haven't masked this. We normally would. We'd have like just the two of us, and then ta-da, there's somebody. But this is really special. And so we had her on from the beginning. And so everybody can see we have a special guest, Chad.
Yes, we do. We have Laurel Hightower. She is an author, and was it Whispers in the Dark? It's her first release, and then most recently, which is still, it's like a year old, isn't it? Crossroads.
Not quite. Yeah, August.
Yeah. So it's not new, but it's your most recent release that's gotten a lot of attention, and rightly so, because I read it and it's very, very good. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you very much.
And then you're editing a anthology, right? Like coming up.
Yeah. The Dead Inside I am working on with Sandra Rutten at Dark Dispatch. And it's an identity horror. And that is actually, subs are open for that until August 2nd, if anyone wants to get one in.
Great. Well,
And by the way, Chad, I got to cut you off, man.
Yeah.
Dude, you totally gave a review of a book on the show. Chad, you got to know, Laurel, he doesn't do this. I joke around about it. I joke around. I tell people to mail their books to him.
I don't
because he wants to read. People, everybody, you've heard it. He does read books, other people's books, and he'll give a good review if it's good.
I talk about what I'm reading or what I like.
That's fair.
Like
That's legit. Yeah, but
yeah.
it's
I just don't.
It's rare though. It's rare.
I don't want. Yeah, I don't want people sending me their books. I'm not a reviewer.
No.
And I don't like to be. I mean, I have. I had a hard enough time trying to keep up with the blurb stuff.
Yeah.
Like that's. I don't like to say no, but I have to because I don't have the time. But I don't say no all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just cleaned my plate of like 3 of them, and then got
Nice.
3 or 4
feeling.
more, and then it's like I don't, and I say the same thing. I will try. I can't promise anything, and I have to like it.
Yeah.
Friend or not, or even if it's someone that I don't know. And you know what? I'll tell you this. I just did do a blurb, and it was so freaking good. And I wouldn't mind saying something right now that I did. It's a collection that's coming out by Eric LaRocca.
Oh God, I bet.
And I haven't read anything except for this thing that I was asked to blurb.
Is that the one for Off Limits?
Yeah, but I can't remember what it's called. It is great, man. It's good. Dude can write.
Yes, he is a talented guy, and also just very, very nice, very good kid.
Yeah,
very good guy.
Seems so. Yeah, so Jeremiah, you stick it, man. I just don't want.
Hey, dude, you let everybody know that you've just recently cleaned your plate. That is a sure signal.
And then I got like 3 more requests.
They're sending you books right now,
part.
Chad. They're postmarking that bugger right now. They're like, Chad, yes, I know it now. No. Buddy. Oh, you're toast, dude. You're toast.
No, but speaking of reading, I did want to talk about what I was reading. And I don't think I showed this last week or the week before, but I have this.
Oh, nice.
The new Joe Lansdale. And
is that an arc, or is that
no? Is
it already out? Is Midlake already out?
No, it comes out the 21st, I think.
You fancy pant guy, dude. He's like, no, it hasn't come out. I'm just gonna show you.
No big deal.
Yeah, I just have a Joe Lansdale book nobody can get yet. Don't worry about it.
It's not. It's not an arc, which makes it, I guess, even cooler, right?
Yeah, because it's not got that little band on it that says.
But Joe's so freaking good, man.
Mm-hmm.
I'm halfway through, and it is so. I love that dude's writing, and it's without him, my own stuff it would sound completely different. If my voice would not be what it is, and I owe a lot of that to him. So make sure you get Moon Lake when it comes out on June.
There you go.
June 21st.
Yeah.
Great book. Lansdale through and through. So we're gonna, we just promised recently that we weren't gonna have like these somber episodes anymore. Because a couple of them got really dark.
Your fault, dude. Your picks, my picks can be fails. Your picks are like tear jerkers. Dude.
That's true, because I picked Paddleton.
Yeah,
I picked Paddleton.
Yeah,
and that was a dark episode. And then I'm the one who's like, let's talk serial killers and empathy. And then that got really dark.
And it just started, wasn't it just originally just to talk about serial killers, but the empathy part kind of developed through the conversation?
Well, it's serial killers and like lack of empathy.
Yeah, lack of empathy, and then it turned into empathy and stuff, and then it just got real heavy and real serious, and yeah. Dude, that's so we're talking today about something a little bit more serious, but I like that, dude.
It's how It's how all my books start anyway. I'll write them, and I'm by the end, I'm like, I'm sorry,
and everybody's crying. They're like, Chad Lucky. Why?
I've apologized so many times for releasing Crossroads in a pandemic. Like, and everybody got to know in real life, like, how did you know that the book came out? I'm like, shh, no, not right now. It's not a good time. I suggest that I think you should watch something on Netflix.
Yeah.
And
turn on some Family Guy.
Yeah. Come to me later. Yeah.
Laugh a little. Yeah.
Yeah.
But so, here I am again posing a conversation that's it's going to get dark, I suppose. Hopefully we can just laugh through it. I don't know how,
I'm an inappropriate laugher. Yes, I'm right on board with talking out.
But it's funny. I was earlier. I was like, I was thinking, maybe I should like, we've got this theme discussion tonight. I should like dress appropriately. I should get like, what's the like most depressing shirt I have? And I'm sitting there thinking, I was like, I need to go change shirts and just put the most depressing shirt that I can grab out of the 200 that I have in my dresser. And then I realized I've already got a Cure shirt on, so
there you go. You're set.
Oh yeah, bro. Yeah,
I might as well just keep it on.
Yeah.
I dress for the occasion without even knowing it.
And I'm dressed like Miami Vice. I mean, I've got like the teal and the pink. I mean, come on, man.
You're the comic relief.
I'm the comic relief, dude. Yeah, I mean, it's gonna work.
Well, this is my crying sweater, so
that's your crying. It's your crying sweater.
I want to be part of it. So.
Well, I don't know how to start this, so I'll just tell you why I thought this was a good idea to talk about, particularly with the three of you. Because that's what we're trying to do, is not only have just discussions as opposed to interviews, but stuff that's appropriate for that person. Not just throw them for the guests, not just throw them into something that they don't know anything about. And Laurel, as you were just talking about, you just released Crossroads, which is like a tearjerker. It's very heavy on grief. And I wrote some stuff like that, probably most notably as far as like grief, Stirring the Sheets. And then Jeremiah, his thing is not published, and he's been writing it for a while. And I think one of the reasons, other than procrastination, why it's taking him so long is because it's so personal. And as regular listeners might know, Jeremiah's teenage daughter passed away from a horrible battle with brain cancer. And so he is would you say dramatizing or not fictionalizing?
It's it's Gonzo in the original sense of Gonzo, right? Like Hunter S. Thompson Gonzo. And so it's fantastic, right? So it's you fantasize, and so it's kind of fictionalized a little bit, and so we keep the basic core of things, but so it tells the truth, but it's not entirely factual. Does that make sense? So And for the sake of stories, I mean, anyone who knows stuff with, stories when kids have brain cancer and they're amazing, fabulous kids, there's like a gazillion people, and that doesn't play very well for writing a book. It's like, how many people are in this? And so it would get chaotic, because it is chaotic. And so you have to kind of take some things out and feel okay putting multiple voices into one person. And you have to do that for the sake of the story. But it tells the truth. And so I'm not forcing words into anybody's mouth. And I actually try really hard to rely almost entirely on things that we know that she said, and the way that she said them and when she said them and where. But at the same time, I wasn't walking around with a recorder all the time.
Right.
And so, but yeah, it's stuck. A little bit of procrastination. I can eat that crow. But it's also, man, that I've written all of the parts that don't devastate me. And I got to the parts, the number of chapters that are literally the most painful things in the world. They're the worst memories I have, and things that I wish I could just erase and I wish I could have a magic wand and make it all go away, and that it could go back to the way it was, and I can't. And so I recently, and I won't go on any further than this, just to say, I overcame some of that by watching in fact, every video I had of the last 3 days of her life. She was in a coma, and I watched it all. And I watched it because people just gave me videos. They would come over. We had hundreds of people in our home and stuff. And so I watched tons of videos, and I made this video that I don't share with, I think there's 9 people who've seen it on the planet. And I made this kind of mini movie out of it with music and everything. It's beautiful. The greatest thing I've ever made. I can't share publicly because she dies in it. But then I took that, and I realized, I'm like, that tells the story of the worst part for me, the absolute worst thing of the chapters that I have left. And I said, I'm going to write this. I'm going to face the beast here. And I did. I looked into that abyss. I stared into it, and I came out victorious. And actually people can hear the chapter, which I wrote as a poem in the form of Dante's Inferno. The style, which is like the hardest format for rhyme and meter in the English language. And I did it, man. And I made it the number of lines that it took, the number of lines equaling the number of steps that I took with her in my arms as I carried her to the hearse in the road.
That's beautiful.
So I wrote it. It's available online. People can see it. I think it's only on Telegram because it has copyrighted music on it. But I know what. So yes. So long story short, I know what it's like to have to write something and use that, and to see the benefits and the difficulties, right? The potentials and the pitfalls of writing about something that is tragic and traumatic, and yet still see, even through the tears, to be able to see that it's therapeutic somehow and cathartic, right?
That's one of the first things I want to talk about was that type of writing being therapeutic. Now, and I wondered before I did it if it was, or if it kind of would do the opposite, like shake the hornet's nest, And when I the two things I fear most are going insane, like losing my mind, and losing my wife. Yeah, I mean, my kids are up there too, but losing my wife. I mean, we've been together 30 years this month, and it's a lot of memories. 3 decades makes me feel like an old man, and I just she's such a big part of my life, and the other fear, the going insane part, I tried to challenge, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. I wrote a story about a guy who's losing his mind because he is not sleeping. He's deprived himself of sleeping and eating because of an abscessed tooth. And so in the process, I haven't been to a point where I'm seeing things or hearing voices or anything like that, but I've felt the pull of unusual anxiety or depression or stuff because of lack of sleep. So I felt that kind of irrational pull of, it's like, man, I'm sure when I go to sleep, I will feel better. And sure enough, it's like eating when you're hungry and then and your blood sugar's off or something like that. And then as soon as you eat, you're just better. And sleep works the same way. But if you don't, and the story is about this guy, and he ends up pulling a tooth out, and then another one, and then another one, and feeding it into a bathroom drain and at a truck stop, and then trying to make sense of everything he's doing. And none of it makes sense that he's doing this. And then he ends up tearing his fingernails off and stuff, and feeding him into this drain because he's convinced that there's something down there that needs them. And it's just from a weakened mind. And when I wrote it, I felt really uncomfortable because I was facing this, maybe it's an irrational fear, I don't know, of someone losing their mind. And as I was writing it, I was like, this is either going to scare me or it's going to be therapeutic for me. And at the time, I didn't like writing about that deep of psychological things. And so I didn't like the process. And then in the middle of it all, I started getting insomnia, which I'd never had in my entire life.
Oh, no.
And so that scared me. I never experienced that. I just could not sleep. And I think it was because I had this publishing opportunity come up that, looking back in hindsight, such a small milestone, but at the time when you're things are new and you just get so excited about something. And I think that may have affected my sleep because I was just so excited about this thing and this opportunity. And, but I think that looking back, I think that it was therapeutic, but like I said, I was afraid that it was going to shake some kind of hornet's nest. And then it would make me more sensitive to that fear because I was entertaining it more.
Yeah.
And so with that in mind, and then dealing with grief, because we're all afraid of our biggest fear probably is losing a loved one. So with that in mind, do you think that do you find that writing about it has been like therapeutic? Like if you had, like Laurel, if you haven't lost a child, obviously that's one of your biggest fears ever.
Yeah.
But you wrote about it. Yeah. So did you? So you were facing this fear. So did you find that was therapeutic and that it helped tame that fear? And not to say that you have an irrational fear that you think about it all the time, but do you think that it helped to write about it?
That's an interesting one, particularly with respect to the ages of the kids involved, because Trey, the subject there, Chris's son who dies, is in his early 20s. And I have a stepson who is getting ready to turn 26, but around the time I was writing this is, and it's not at all based on him, but as he was doing things that young men will do that terrify their parents and people who love them, we definitely had a few moments where we got a knock on the door that we thought was gonna be a lot worse than it was. And, so that was definitely a fear of mine at that time. And, but it's like, and it's not that it's not the same thing, because I don't think it matters what age your child is. I think when I'm 80 and, Tiny is I can't do math, 40s or whatever, however old he is then, like if he were to pass away before me, like, I think that would destroy me. And so it's not a matter of like, oh, he's small and cute now and, or he's helpless or he's whatever. It's like, you've put all this into creating this person and guiding them. And I just don't think that it's ever like, well, it's not that bad if they're, 22. But writing about that was actually something I was very afraid of. I didn't, and this is part of it is superstition, honestly. It's interesting because when you mentioned that when you were writing about, the guy having insomnia and you stop being able to sleep, like there is a part of me that's like, if I say its name, it's going to notice me,
Right.
And I didn't want to poke that bear at all. Like, I was just like, I'm going to, I know that this is something that happens and I'm going to go through life like this, as much as I can. And I think a lot of what I focused on, kind of what got me into the mindset for this character anyways, was not the moment, not the act of it, not the loss itself, but everything after. How you continue to exist, how your life looks after that. Do you have the courage? Do you have the will or desire to keep putting one foot in front of the other? And so that's a lot of what I explored. And I think maybe in some ways that was therapeutic to a degree, because it made me see through my character's eyes, like, well, what do you do? What does your life look like? And if you do keep going, is there purpose? How does it end up looking? And I do think that was something that was useful to explore, for sure. And it's something that I'm no longer afraid to write about. I'll say I have been very careful not to tap into that well again, because I feel like that's like, I don't want to become the person who just writes about, that particular subject. And I feel like I've like hit, where I wanted to on that. But it's a little bit, when you think about not wanting it to notice you too, like, so my big thing was having a really, really hard time getting pregnant. And it took 3 years, and it was absolute hell. And it just got worse and worse and worse, and was so upsetting and was just awful. And I wrote a lot back then because it was all I really felt okay doing. I didn't want to go anywhere. I don't want to see anybody. It's like, it's the one thing you don't want to hear about. And so absolutely everyone you meet is going to talk about it, incessantly. So I wrote a lot about it, and I was afraid in what I was writing, I didn't want to address it. But then I just did. I just was like, you know what? No, I'm going to make this happen the way I want to have it, or I want to, I just want to address it, basically. And and that for me was very, like, I don't know. I guess in a way it kind of like got me on the train of like, you don't get rid of the weeds in a garden by ignoring them.
Yeah, that's cool. And I'm glad I'm not alone with the whole like the superstitious stuff, because sometimes when I'm writing a story or a book or whatever, it feels like I've got this voodoo doll in my hands, and if I name a character that's going to die, someone I love, that they're going to die, this thing's going to happen to them. It's so ridiculous. And I've seriously like been like, oh yeah, I'll name them this, but don't they die? Yeah, that's right, they don't, or they die. Yeah. I'm not writing. That's not going to be their name.
Yep.
But
did you find it harder or easier, or was it just different, just purely different, writing about the loss and writing about the life after? And I ask because the parts that I've got remaining are the time after. And a lot of people would say, well, how is that the worst part? Well, the worst part was losing.
Right.
But after that, it's living without her. And I've always wondered, I saw a lady years ago. I was at a funeral, a good friend of ours, her daughter, one of her kids, she had like 9, so she had many kids, but one of her kids committed suicide. And it was a really tragic situation, a lot of mental health things going on prior to that, leading up to it. And ended up, I was at the funeral and saw this moment where the in a traditional funeral at a Catholic church, they come through the back, almost like a wedding. It's kind of an interesting thing. And you come through the back in the middle, everyone stands up and looks and stuff. And they opened the door, and they didn't know she was right there. And she saw this casket, and she, she was just devastated, and she ran and said, my boy, my beautiful boy. And she leapt and she jumped on this casket and just grabbed it. And it was so painful for me. I'm like weeping, and thinking, how do you live? How can you continue? And this was, about 10 years before I had to experience it myself. And it was one of those weird things going through it of like, and people have asked me that, how do you do that? You do a show and you're laughing and everything else. And I'm like, watch the video where I read the chapter. I'm bawling at the end. Like, and I'm by myself in a room and I'm crying my brains out. I can't even function. I'm like, it's so terrible, but we're like compulsive waker uppers. We're constantly waking up every morning, we're back again. Unless we're dead, we're back and opening our eyes, and there's another day and everything else. And the world keeps going on. And it's a really challenging thing because you live with that pain and you live with it. And when Chad just as an aside, when Chad was saying, do you find it therapeutic, or is it really difficult kind of thing? And to me, when he said that, I said, I thought both. I said it's both. It's not. It's a yin yang, right? It's a terrible thing. Sometimes the dark is winning, and sometimes the light is winning. And either way, though, in the end, it's kind of weird balance. But I was wondering for you, as you're writing this and putting yourself in the mindset of this, and relating to it the best, the way you do as a writer, was it harder writing that part, or was it harder in a different way? And if so, how?
Well, that was really about all I wrote with it. I started from a couple of years past the loss, and the references to it throughout are somewhat glancing. There's never like this scene where you're told in current, in a suspenseful written way what happens to him, and that kind of thing. It's more, but to me, I feel like that is how I would look at something like that. I remember, losses, and I remember those moments where someone comes to get you, or says they have something to tell you, and you just you have that moment right before and it's like your mind takes this little picture, and it's like, this is the last time I will feel this way. And I feel like that is a lot of what I have done in situations of grief, and and it's a defense mechanism, and it's also just, I think, it's more like other members of, being there for other members of my family who've lost somebody. Like when my grandmother passed away, and my mom, it's like, obviously that's like, God, you just lost your mom, and that's like much, much more intense for her than it was for me. It was terribly sad, but just, I feel like there's this, and Jeremiah, you would know better than I would in this particular situation, but in a lot of what I've seen, there is this forward momentum and this sense of unreality in the times once you get this strange mechanism going of funerals and wakes, and planning things, and filing for insurance, and just doing these things that have to be done in the machinery. And I noticed, that for a lot of people, it was like they just, my husband's father passed away right before I had my son. And it was like, he just got up, faced it, did absolutely everything he had to do. And it wasn't until well after all that, when he got to, I call it like losing your everydays. It's when you reach those moments that you shared with them that may not have felt all that special at the time, but they're not there. And I feel like that is what I really wanted to address in the book, was all the times that he wasn't there. And so in it, I've lived with a teenager and helped raise one. And I know how much of interacting with them is like yelling to the next room. You're like, "Do you get your coat?" Yeah. And so there's a way that you would maybe just pretend that they were still there, that they're just right around that corner. You don't see them. So I'm definitely not going to say that the way that my character dealt with it was the healthiest way that anybody could. But yeah, I do think to me, that seems like the most terrifying part. Although, as you say, the video that you made and what you experienced there, I don't know. I mean, what have you? Well, you haven't gotten to the other part yet. So is that what you're dreading more?
Well,
as far as writing it.
Yeah. But it's interesting because even just listening to you has helped me in a way. It's like I'm starting to even think of myself and be like, oh yeah, man, maybe the part you thought was the worst isn't maybe the worst. When you were saying that the feeling of when they're not there, when they were there before and they're not. There's a chapter. In fact, it's the one that I'm supposed to be writing right now, and that I haven't been writing. I wrote what I said was the worst one, but I'm like, am I still skirting it? And it's this idea that after she was gone, someone asked me a question. Because I was doing these videos and stuff, and talking about momentum. We were still kind of riding this wave where tons of people are reaching out to you, and everybody's wanting to, figure out ways to honor her in different ways. And I remember this guy asked me this question in a live stream, and he said, "Do you still feel her?" And it was the weirdest question to me, because at the time I was just a very adamant atheist at the time. And to me, it was all material. And I said, well, yes, I feel her, but it was all within the context of sensory experience. I said, like, you know, I've got her paintings, I've got her drawings, I've got her diaries, I've got clothes, I've got all these things. But I quickly realized after a while, and people, you know, reaching out and stuff, that starts to kind of go. And that eventually you have to go to that room and you got to clean it up. And you got to put stuff in a trunk, you know, or a chest, or the worst part, throw it away. And it was so hard. And eventually, you know, because the day he asked that, I was like, oh yeah, man, yeah, I definitely feel her. But I remember one day I woke up, I was really bummed about things. And I remember going downstairs, and I had these balloons that were given to her, these get well balloons that people gave her when she was at the hospital. And I had them in the room where she died. She died in our home. And so I had them in the room where I would go and I'd work every day. And those balloons amazingly lasted a very long time. It were just, I'm like, what are these things made out of? Like, how are they still floating? But one day it was just flat. It was just on the ground, these 2 balloons. And I still have them. I preserve them. I threw away a lot of things, but not those balloons. And I have them still. But I remember how I felt, because I realized at that point that I don't feel her the same way. Like when, you know, when your husband, right, or kids are in a room and they come in the house, you can sense it, you know. And it's kind of like, you know, you look out the window and you think maybe they pulled up. You didn't hear anything. You just kind of feel it, right? Or coming down the stairs, you can recognize the cadence of that, and you know who that is. And there's this feeling you have. That was gone. And so, you know, it was a weird insight for me, which led to terrible despair. I mean, once that hit me, blam, then it's like the cycle of grief thing. It's one of those. And next thing you know, I mean, months go by and you're like, what happened? It's a blur. I don't remember anything. And you snap out of it. But I know what you mean when you say that, when you say those moments where they should have been there and they weren't, and how truly hard that is. And how people may not know how much that is in someone's life, and they kind of take it for granted, like, you know, you don't know how much you appreciate water till the well runs dry, kind of thing. But or like when you try to quit smoking and you realize, wow, I light it up when I go into the car, or when I eat food, or when I wake up in the morning. Or the same thing with a phone. You don't realize how much it's integrated into your existence until it's gone. And when that happens, every one of those little triggers all the time. So that's an awesome insight. That's an awesome and just a degree of awareness that you had. And admittedly, I haven't read the book, and I feel badly about it. But now you're describing it, I'm like, I have to read this thing. like I need to read her. And so
just make sure that you're doing something cheerful. Remember, it's an incredibly depressing book.
It's okay, believe it or not. Like it's one of those things, you know, when you've gone through certain things in life, I know it'll be depressing. But I think it's one of those things where I can say I've been somewhere like that. Yeah. And I'm here now. Yeah. You know, and I'm laughing with you. so it's okay. And it's a book. And so, but I look forward to it. And so, but I wanted to ask that. I was curious on your take for that. I'm really appreciate that answer, actually, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I think about it, I'm a little shocked that I even bothered to write something like Stirring the Sheets, because I wouldn't call myself irrationally afraid of losing my wife. It's more of like I'm one of these people who, you know, okay, I'll be home in an hour, and then 2 hours goes by, and then I'm like, I'm not necessarily pacing, but I'm waiting for cops at the door, you know, and I'm like things like that. And it's just, it's just how I think, man. And I think because it's so to even write, to consider writing about a man who, you know, had lost his wife for, you know, after 50 years, and to go through this loss, and how would you live, and, you know, with the exception of stealing a body and spooning it, there's a lot of me in that. I can see myself not touching anything, you know, in my house, getting rid of clothes, dude. No, I just don't, you know, I wouldn't want them here, but at the same time, I would knowing me, I would make myself have some kind of guilt. And I would feel like that was such a part of her that that wouldn't be able to get rid of it, And so doing anything, something as simple as like, literally stirring the sheets so that the imprint was no longer there and stuff like that. So these are things that I thought I could see myself. And I know that when things go down, it's just different, man. You try to picture yourself in a scenario and things are different. And time doesn't heal all wounds 100%, but time certainly does something. And it does heal, but not, you're always going to have these really deep scars. But I think I'm like that. And probably one of the reasons why I wrote that in the first place and have that fear is because of, and I've alluded to this a little bit before I met Mary. Actually, several girlfriends before I met Mary, I was in love and she died. And I was there, and it was a freak accident, and it was traumatic. And it was supposed to be this, we're going to get married kind of thing, and it really stung. But pardon me, it hurt like hell. But when you're like in your late teens going through something like that, that's how long ago this was. When you're in your late teens, spending 2 years with someone, first of all, it feels like a lifetime when you're a kid.
Yeah.
It just does, man. It's like, can you, because, it's like most of your friends have not been with somebody that long. And it's like, wow, but now I have 3 decades of memories with my wife, and going through that, I recall, I recall having discussions, what would you do if I died? Oh, I would kill, like this Romeo and Juliet thing, I would kill myself. Oh, me too. And then it happens, and it's a different, and that is how I know things are different when you are, when it happens. And Jeremiah, we've talked about this in a way different conversation when we talked about, like, what would you do if someone broke into your house? Would you, what would you do? Would you just immediately
You're throwing me under the bus right now, Chad? You're gonna be, I'm like Mr.
I'm not
Nice
throwing you
Guy
under
right
the
now,
bus.
and then you're like, well, Laurel might not know. She might be like, what? He said he would do this? Like what?
No.
Like, I'm a nice guy, I swear.
No, like what? Like what would
I just
you
don't
do?
like
Would
criminals. People come into my house and I'm like sleeping. I don't know.
Would you
I'd be
immediately
scared
just grab your gun, assuming you owned one, and just go for the head and shoot their brains all over your house? Or would you, what would you do? Or let's say you had a bat and they were not armed. Would you beat them to a pulp, or would you beat them enough to stop them? And it's like, I know a lot of people that they're like, oh, I'd beat that MFer down, and stuff like that. And it's like, some of these people, I believe that they would.
Right.
But I think that most of the people that are able to answer that question, they are jumping into a scenario that they haven't been in, and that given the opportunity to be in that scenario, I think there'd be a different outcome. And we talked about how, Jeremiah, you said you probably kill the guy, and I would probably go for the leg and say, please stop. But I did give the, unless I knew that my family was truly in danger, then absolutely, I wouldn't even hesitate to kill
And you
someone.
admitted that you would, do it with a mace because of the kind of gore fetish you have. And,
that's not what I said. No.
And I'm like, look, I was doing him a favor. I'm just offing the guy. You literally want to see bones sticking out, you sicko.
It's whatever weapons you have, man. I mean, you got a crossbow, you go for the crossbow. What do you got,
Right. But it's like, do you go for the eye or just the thigh?
My thing is, I think
if you know the thigh is going to stop them, and this is going to
femoral
end,
artery. Okay,
well, let's.
You're gonna kill him anyway.
You two have gone dark.
Okay,
all the listeners are like, Jeremiah sounds pretty good now.
even if you hit the femoral artery, even if you hit that artery, as long as they don't touch it, they're probably going to be okay. They just need to get to the hospital. Don't pull that out.
I'm gonna say I am a gun owner, but I am the type of, I live in Kentucky for one thing, and I am the type of gun owner that if me giving up my gun means that people are safer, I will be the first in line. I really like shooting my 9mm. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But I have, done a certain amount of target practice. I'm a pretty good aim, but in a situation like that, I wouldn't think that I would be. But like, to answer as far as like, not even sure whether you're asking me or not, but I'm going to answer it anyway.
Yes,
As far as
please.
like what I would do,
Yeah.
I would say that depends on how much they scared me.
Oh,
Because I think about how I'm in traffic, which I have gotten a lot better because I was definitely like an angry driver, like bad, but especially like when I had my son, I was like, chill out, Hightower, like you just like, and I also like recognize why people might drive so much. Maybe they have a car sick kid like I do, but the times that I am the most furious in traffic is when someone's like does something terribly dangerous that puts my child in danger. Then it's like I go from fear to like, I will rip your face off and feed it to you. Like, just stop that car. I will get you. And so I feel like it's like one of those things, like if it was somebody that like tried the door, like maybe stepped in and then left, whatever, like I'd be like, don't come back. Maybe I'm going to shoot the wood just to scare you. But if I found them at my son's like door, yeah, I mean, I'm doing the zombie double tap and then I'm probably going to shoot him in the crotch.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, did you just come close to my kid? I think it's the level of fear that I would feel that would depend on, that would make me a certain level of violent.
I just think it's one of those things where I think that more people give an answer that, I don't know. I just think that, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. I just think that more people give an answer that like a default answer that they think, and that might not even be the one. But I think it depends on the situation, and whether you're fearful. I mean, I've done stuff where just sporadically, some dude messing with my daughter, and I, threw him around a little bit. I would never thought that something like that would happen. I'm not really a violent dude or anything, but when it comes to like murdering somebody, I just picture myself like having done something like that. Even, someone breaking into my house or someone threatening me, and then I kill them. And then it's like, I would probably, I don't know, man. I can't remember what I said on that one episode, Jeremiah, about how something about, please stop or something like that, rather than like killing them.
And I'm like, no, dude, that's not gonna happen.
I'm not
come
afraid
back
of
here, dude. Yeah.
I'm not afraid of the person. I'm afraid of what it would do to me after.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's very fair.
And so I writing stirring the sheets and using the having already gone through a grief that I mean, when I look at it through a different lens, a 30-year lens, with the same woman versus what I had before, I mean, it's totally different perspectives. It's like, that's all I knew at the time. 2 years is a really, really long, it's a life. Like I said, it's a lifetime, especially when you're younger. And then, maybe when, my wife and I are old and we've been together for 50 or 60 years, I'd probably be like, remember back when we were only together for 30 years when we were kids? It's all about perspective. But I guess, and I had tried to write something about the incident that was going to be this book, and I got, I think, 12,000 words in it, and I wrote the scene, and I wrote it like verbatim, and then I sometimes I read my stuff out loud to my wife. She's just my biggest cheerleader, and so I was reading it out loud, and I couldn't even get anywhere near that part before I couldn't read it, and then I haven't touched it since, and that was probably 4 or 5 years ago, well, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and I haven't touched it since, and I plan to. But so I'm shocked that I guess that I put myself in a position where I had to be in a headspace where a man loses his wife and is just absolutely miserable for a while. I mean, I definitely couldn't wait to be done writing it, but I was curious about what it would do for me, and whether or not it would be therapeutic, or whether or not it would feed that fear that I have of living without her, and the fact that I even accomplished that, I guess, says a lot about it, and I feel like it was therapeutic. You know, I probably sound like I'm lay awake at night and I think about it all the time, and I don't. It's just
No,
that
but it's
when the question is posed, what's your biggest fear? Or if I, think about something like that, or even when we're reading, I think I mentioned something to you when I first started reading Crossroads. It felt a lot like Stirring the Sheets, because this was things that already happened, and this person was really suffering, and they were trying to cope and didn't know how. And, it was the same. I mean, they're two completely different books, but that it reminded me of that. And it reminded me of, just being in that headspace and wondering, trying to write that out and trying to be empathetic and what would you do and stuff like that. And I suppose it was therapeutic. I just wondered other people's experience, and if they found that, therapeutic or not, or because writing is, for most people, is supposed to be therapeutic.
we're horror writers. I don't know. So I mean, some of it is, and some of it just puts some images in your head. I do think it's interesting, Chad, because I was thinking, when you were talking about your other kind of like fear with the losing your mind, and the way you described the story that you wrote about, it's like he had lost his connection to reality, and it was like this belief that something in his brain needed this. I think that's such an interesting take, because in some ways I can really see that being something similar to what, your character in Stirring the Sheets and Chris, to a certain extent. It's like, it's almost like this magical thinking a little bit, you're like, okay, well, if I bring her body back here, then I haven't really lost her, or there's some essence of her. And if I keep baking his favorite brownies and calling up the stairs to him and imagining that he's talking to me, then he's not really gone. And there's so much superstition and so much, I don't know. I think especially when you winnow down to times like that, when you are walking this tightrope of, not looking at the fact that you're laying next to a dead body, or something like that. It's like the slightest thing could knock you off that, view that you're kind of depending on. And I can really see, I don't know, it just seems very, very similar, that particular mindset in both aspects. I can really see that being very similar. Yeah,
it's just a way of coping. And I guess for, in all of those instances that you gave. And that's why when I hear about somebody doing something not necessarily bizarre, but like actually believing that, and Crossroads is a great example of this, I guess, actually believing that the ghost of their loved one is hanging around or talking to them and stuff. It's not my job, and I don't care whether that's real or not, because, man, whatever gets that person through, let them have that. And I remember when I lost my ex-girlfriend, her mom really didn't like me. And she never really had any reason to. I don't know. It's because I had long hair. I don't know what. And then as soon as everything went down, I thought, well, now I'm going to somehow be blamed. But she just, we got really close, and she just adored me, and we hung out a lot after that. And mostly just getting drunk together and smoking weed or whatever, just trying to cope in our own way, I guess. But she would talk to me about, do you feel her? Actually, I wrote a scene in Slow Burn on Riverside about what I'm talking about right now. Do you feel her around you? And I'm like, no. And she's like, well, she was visiting me the other day and rearranged the butterflies on the butterfly magnets on the refrigerator. And I had told her, and she would bring it up every time we would talk and stuff and hang out. And I just told her, I think early on, I was like, listen, I just don't believe in that. I don't believe in ghosts. But I wasn't like trying to convince her that wasn't, her daughter. I was just like, the conversation would get so insistent that I feel something, or why wasn't I? And I was like, I just don't believe in that. But I felt such sympathy for her that she was, plus she was already an alcoholic, but she had turned into an absolutely raging alcoholic after that. And I understood that too. I thought it was sad that she was basically just killing herself to live and waiting to die, I think, at that point. And so, but I understood that, my grief was on a different level. This was her child. Fortunately, they weren't close. They didn't even live together. They didn't get along. But still, maybe that was a whole other. Maybe there was a whole bunch of guilt attached to that. Now we can't ever, we were estranged. Now we can't ever get that back. And now there's so much lost time or whatever. But yeah, when somebody is going through that and they're dealing with it in a way that I supposedly, I guess, find strange based on my beliefs about ghosts or anything like that, that is probably one time where I'm just like, hey man, go for it. If that's, it doesn't really matter if that's what you've got to, try and hold on to, then even if you think you're talking to them every night, I mean, if it's getting you by,
Yeah. I always just kind of gauge it, and I don't know. One of the storylines that was important to me in Crossroads was her agency and her, her love interest kind of respecting that. Mm-hmm. And there have been some people that have had kind of a problem with that. And I fully understand it, because everyone experiences the story, with their own emotions and how they are. But it's like, it's just one of those things, I would always I've experienced kind of similar things to like what you're talking about, somebody not only wanting to tell me what they had experienced, but wanting me to validate it and say, yes, I feel this thing. And I believe in ghosts, and I believe that I have interacted with them, usually in very short spurts, very recently after they pass away. Mm-hmm. I'm Southern, so maybe that's our thing. Our ghosts linger a little longer, do the Southern goodbye, and then they head out. But, in those sort of situations, like the thing that I kind of worry about is like, okay, is this getting you through? Or is this your new thing? Is this your crutch? Is this what you are doing to prevent moving on, or, finding healthy ways to channel this? But it's such an individual thing. Who am I to even say someone should get over their grief?
Yeah.
It's such a touchy thing. So.
Yeah.
That's actually, it's funny you mentioned that stuff, because that's what I was going to ask you, is kind of like, talking about the aftermath of death, and kind of the things that come about almost mechanically, right? And then after that just kind of come your way, and you take you off guard sometimes, and you're not expecting this or not expecting that. And I was going to say, do similar things play in with the aftermath of your book, and that the way that people have responded to you, and the difficulties and the challenges and things like that? And so I'm really glad that it came up, because that was going to be my next question. I was going to say, what are your thoughts about that? And I knew where you stood on ghosts, because I heard you talk about the movie Eclipse and how you got into writing. I listened. I did a little homework, a little bit. I'm like, I got to see and hear. Although I wouldn't have guessed you're from Kentucky. Your accent, you're killing me over here. I'm like, I got all these friends from Kentucky, and I can tell they're from Kentucky, and I can't.
I'm from Lexington, so it's one of those things that's like mine will definitely kick up, like if I get a little mad, or if I get a little, if you're telling a story, then it gets to like kicks up a little bit. But yeah, no, we're definitely more like the central Kentucky. We don't get to partake in all that.
Yeah.
Accent stuff. But
that's about the grief thing. I try to say the same thing, about like when people going through that, because I have a lot of people reach out to me all the time, about dealing with grief, or they're going through a hard time. I've struggled when people are going through a hard time right now. So like if their kids have cancer, for example, and they reach out to me and they're like, hey, would you be able to share this with your friends? We know that there's a lot of people who follow you on this topic particularly. I have a really hard time, because I see those kids, and it's so overwhelming. The empathy I have for them and for the family. And so I find myself sadly I've been distant for a long time, and it's been kind of hard, even with Make-A-Wish. Like I would love to help out with stuff to do with Make-A-Wish. I love the organization. The stuff they did for my family was amazing. I mean, it was just a life-changing experience. We'll always remember it. And yet it's a really tough thing. But I try to do like you're saying, like letting people know, hey, you shouldn't feel that way. And I'm pretty hesitant to ever say that. I think there have only been a few occasions in my life that I've ever seen someone, and it was a guy who lost his kid to cancer. But his reaction to it and how long it was and how deep it was and how persistent in everything and how it affected his other children and his marriage. The divorce came about, which is common, right?
Yeah.
It's like they say, it's like 70% or something like that of families that go through this will divorce within like 5 years.
That sucks, man. That's lame. It sucks.
Well, it's so devastating to everybody, the loss, and everybody's in their own world, that it's really tough. But this particular person was like every post, every day, multiple posts a day. We're talking for a year and a half. And the other kids were like no longer ever being talked about and things like that. And so it wouldn't be to say, don't grieve that way, or don't feel the grief the way you do. It's even at that level, you're going to experience it in your own way. At the same time, I would encourage people sometimes to manage grief differently, to say, not to take it away, right? Let it thrive, but in a certain way, so that it doesn't just go around like a wrecking ball and destroy the other things that you love, because there will come a day where you're going to add that to it too. And you're going to say, dude, it's bad enough I lost my daughter. Now I lost my other daughter, and I lost my son, and I lost my wife, and I lost my job. And then you're, talking knives to the wrist and stuff. I mean, that stuff happens. And so I'm really hesitant. And thankfully, most people, strangely enough, it's just like a survival thing, a survival mechanism that people eventually get to that place where that sadness seems to be, and this is common enough, I can say we here, that it seems to be human, that you get to a certain place where the sadness goes from thinking about a loss so much, to the guilt people feel for not thinking about that person like they used to, and as often, or visiting the grave as frequently, or whatever, and feeling like, how dare I live this way, where I'm going about and I'm smiling and laughing it up, and my kid or my wife or my husband is buried in the ground, and that's its own kind of thing. And so I don't know, I just, as you were describing that, I thought of those things, and as I said, I'm really glad you brought that up, because I could anticipate, even having not read the book yet, and I say yet with great emphasis, because this is making me want to read it now. I'm like, come on, and I'm good with this. This is going to happen. So, but to hear what you're saying about how the people who've reached out to you, and even respecting the differences, knowing that there are people who say, I don't think this is right, or this isn't the way it is, and the way that you as an author, that you rolled with that, even in the way you described it, was really, it's awesome. It's encouraging, actually.
Thank you.
So
I appreciate it. It's been, and it's, and I don't want to spoil anything for you. So, so part of it is this objection a little bit to her choices that she ends up making, and, how people go along with that. So, again, that's something that I respect. If people, don't feel like that is, it's not my job as an author to go back after the fact and convince them, oh no, this is, exactly what it is. But it is such a different, that's, when you're talking about the guy who, just kind of let it take over his life to the detriment of his other kids. I feel like that's the one, and it is utterly not my place to tell someone what's irresponsible of them in a situation like that. But I just feel like, as a parent, your first responsibility for the rest of your damn life is the kids, and you grieve with them. You don't hide it. You allow them to know that it's painful, but you let them know you're still there for them, and that they haven't lost you, because they're grieving too, and they're kids. And, we walk them through this. We teach them how to grieve. We teach them how to touch those emotions, and not to close one another out. I mean, Jesus, sit on the couch and cry together before you I'm sorry that no, it's not, and it's not like I'm like mad at this dude. It's just like yeah. Sorry, I've got a 3-year-old. He's learning emotions, and it's just I just want to mother everyone now, and it's
amen
it's a problem.
Amen.
It's a problem.
Amen to that. No, I mean it's true, and you hit the nail on the head in my opinion about this. That it's not telling that guy you can't grieve so deeply, like you're like, hey, don't let it hurt your heart that bad. I mean, it hurt his heart. The guy's obviously devastated. You know what it's the guy's, just an example. But to say, yes, those kids, I love how you brought up. You said those kids lost too. I remember after our daughter died, I mean, we were very forthright with all the kids. They were old enough to have serious conversation, right? And so they knew like what's happening. They're not oblivious to it. And so we had to have really heartfelt, and I made a promise I wasn't going to lie to them. It doesn't mean I have to be as brutal in telling the truth. There's a way to do that. But at the same time, and I remember after she died and after the funeral and everything else, it was the week after that. I remember we went out to this place to get some Mexican food, and I was so hurt. In fact, my wife took a picture while we were there, and you can see it in my face, like it's like lifeless, right? But I remember the kids asking this question. We did this thing called Dude Time, where I determined, I said, look, we're spending so much time at chemo and radiation that I need to bring the boys out, and I need to just take them out on their own. We do something that's just the dudes, right? And we're going to have a good time. And if it comes up, questions that they have, but I'm not going to just use that as another time to constantly, because it's our life. It's in the house, and so it's everything. It's what we do. So he asked me, he said, are we still going to do Dude Time? And I went home and I wrote this thing, and I read it to him, and I sat him on my lap, and it was a letter to him. And I said, now more than ever. I said, because I know that you're hurt too. It's not just me. That's your big sister. That's the firstborn. She's the leader of the kids. She's the boss. And by a couple of years, and they all loved her. I mean, she's amazing. And she's gone. And I said, there's a great transference of power too with this particular child, because he was the second born. And I said, they're going to look at you, dude, like you are the big kid now. And he's going to have to navigate that. He was able to get away with it before. And I said, but now it's thrust upon you. And I said, this is going to naturally just happen. I said, but I need to be there for you. And I know that you're going to cry. There'll be those days, not just as a kid, but when you get older. And I've talked to him about this, even my daughter. I said, look, I know there's going to be days where something happens and you just start weeping, and your loved one, whoever you're with, that they're not going to understand. And they're going to wonder, are you okay? And then when you explain it, that it's something that you go through because you went through it. And I said, but it's going to start now. And so I need to be there for you. So I'm allowed to be a wreck, okay? But I need to be a wreck that's a controlled demolition in a way, right? It's like I'm okay. I'm strong enough that I can wipe tears with you and have your head on my shoulder and hold you and say, I'm here for the long run, bro. I'm here for the long run, sister. We're together. We're in forever. And so unless you're that person, it's going to be a real wreck. So I'm really, as I said, I'm grateful you brought that up, and not just because I agree with what you said. I do. You're very wise. She knows what she's talking about. People are like, Jeremiah doesn't, but Laurel does. So
I wasn't wise enough to not wear mascara though.
Oh yeah, no. It happens.
Sorry.
It's okay. It happens.
No, it's all Chad talking about, his character and stirring the sheets and all that. It's hard not to like feel that empathy,
Mm-hmm.
But it's part, Chad, of what I really like about your writing, because it's like this quiet humanity. It's this voice that doesn't tell you how to feel, but it opens the door for you to, like, I don't know, I'm probably bungling the description of it. Like I recently read The Pale White, and that is obviously, you're not female, you're,
No.
none of those things, but,
Yeah.
but it's just like, it's just like you're able to open a door into these characters' heads and like step into them and feel their emotion and just kind of transfer that. So I feel like that's something that really comes across in your writing, is that particular type of empathy as well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks. We were talking about how or how not to, like rules of grief, how to express your grief. And it reminded me of this really impactful scene in probably the greatest TV show ever, 6 Feet Under. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, but there's a scene in there where one of the main characters is that the whole family owns a funeral home business. And so they're around this kind of stuff, and they attend a funeral, and the woman there is Jeremiah, probably close to what that woman was doing, where she threw herself in the casket, and that's what this woman was doing, just losing her mind and freaking out and making a scene. And people were all kind of looking at each other and stuff, and it pissed this one dude off because he was like, "This right here is what we should all be doing every time, none of this freaking crap where we're just our heads bowed, we're wearing black, and the woman has the veil or whatever it's called, and all this kind of, we should be screaming and kicking and crying and, pulling our hair out and jumping up and down. And that's what that reminded me of. It was it was a pretty cool, if you don't want to cry, don't watch that show because it is the saddest show you'll ever see. I mean, it's known to have the best season finale of any show ever. But it's a HBO show.
Now I gotta seek it out.
Oh man, I'm telling you what, I'm not even joking. It is heartbreaking, and so heartbreaking. Like my wife and I, we watch stuff together, and I'm the crier, dude. I'm like, when I cry, I don't like baby cry or anything. I'll tear up or something and might have to wipe a thing, during something sad. She's just not like that. And except for animals, if a dog dies or something like that, look out. Yeah. And so I had watched the whole series. I think there's 5 seasons of 6 Feet Under years before maybe 3 or 4 years before she did. And I was trying to get her to watch it. And I think she watched like half the first season with me. And then I just took off and watched the rest by myself. And when I got to the last episode, there were episodes where it upset me, but the last one, I cried during that, like a baby. It was ridiculous. And there's this song that plays that even to this day, I want nothing to do with that beautiful song because it reminds me of that last, that last episode in the last like 10 minutes or something. I can't handle it. And so a couple of years go by, 3 or 4 years, and my wife starts watching the show, and I pop in every once in a while, and she's watching it over the course of a month or two. And she gets to that episode, and I pop my head in because I could, and I heard that song. And I could not even be in the like room. And then later, like I had to leave because I started tearing up. I wasn't watching the show. I hadn't been invested in it. I just knew. And then like a week went by, and I was talking to some friends, I think my sister or something, and I was telling her about it. I couldn't even freaking tell her about it because I started choking up. Tell her about me laughing at myself about how I, this stupid song and stuff.
That's a powerful damn scene. That is a powerful scene. Every
time I think about it, man, I almost choke up. But yeah, don't watch it unless you're prepared to. It's heavy, man. It's super heavy. But yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I like what he said about that everyone should be, causing a scene at something like that. I read this really great nonfiction book called, I think it's Traveling with Ghosts, and it's a woman whose fiance, they were in their early 20s and they were traveling in Australia, and her fiance died suddenly. He was stung by a jellyfish, a venomous jellyfish, and he died, right in front of her. And one of the most interesting things was these 2 girls found her on the beach, and they were Jewish, and they sit Shiva. And I am not going to speak at all with any sort of authority on that subject, but what she finally gathered was that sometimes they screamed for her. When she wasn't, able to, when she was numb, they would do it for her. And they didn't know her at all, but because she experienced this loss, they took responsibility for her. They picked her up, they took her to the police station. They were with her for like an entire week, and they just fully encouraged that whole scream, yell, punch something. You've got to experience this. And I think there's a book that I'm writing right now that I've got a line in it that the guy's a victim's advocate, and he says Americans have grief all wrong. They wait until a year later and then they finally lose it, and you need to be screaming about it in the moment. And I think it's so true, because even the phrase, causing a scene has this connotation of like, I mean, if you do that at your own child's funeral, it's like there's going to be, people who think poorly of you for it, who are judgmental, and it's, I don't know. I mean, how can you possibly grieve wrongly?
Yeah.
You can see that a little bit. It's powerful with the idea of Americans have it wrong, and you can almost get a glimpse of that, with it. You take the Bible or a Greek tragedy, right? So the way that Jews in the past have dealt with mourning, where you'd have the weepers and the people wailing, right, at the tomb, and you would have in Greece this kind of same thing. Like you'd have the mourners, right, and you'd go and you would hear the wailing. You would hear that, and it was a very public thing. It was communal. It was a community styled thing, and not just all individualistic and internalized and stuff like that to be fleshed out on your own later. But that it was something that it's okay to just weep your brains out loud. And a lot of American people, not only do they not understand that logic, but they kind of play into it, like assuming that there is a lack of authenticity to that,
Yes.
where there's a lack of authenticity, where they say, oh, they're the people, you'll hear, well, they're paid mourners and stuff. And so they emphasize different things that deprive others of the authenticity of that, because in our cultural expression of grief, we're individualistic. And suppress it. We suppress it.
Yes.
And then flesh it out on our own later and wonder why we struggle dealing with it.
Yeah, we explode in unhealthy ways a year and a half later. And it's like, God, why is she still upset?
Yeah. Our explosions are communal, right? The aftermath and the bad fallout is all communal, because everybody in the community is like, dang, this guy's not doing a good job with his grief. And you're like, we could have done that back there. We could have all just gotten out a good cry. And
reminds me of Midsummer. Reminds me of Midsummer.
Yeah.
I have not seen that.
No, all those chicks crying.
Yeah.
I still need to see that. Someone's going to pull my horror card if I don't.
Yeah.
That's like one of like 3 that probably is required.
At least you've seen Hereditary, right?
No.
Oh
man.
No.
Your card is gone, Laurel. You're done. You're out.
Thanks for coming on, Laurel. It was nice having you.
Here's my excuse. No one else of course my 3-year-old's not going to watch this stuff with me. My husband despises horror. It's very uncomfortable for him to watch. I used to like try and make him watch it, and he would just like very nicely be like, okay. But I finally realized it was like physically uncomfortable for him. It made him miserable. So it's like, no, I'm not going to do that. But I get like an hour a week to watch what I want to watch. Well, then so it's always like in small,
So it'll be a three week process to watch.
Exactly.
Basically, that's how that is how I do things. I watched Caveat on Shudder.
I want to see that. I don't know anything about it, but
so good. Don't bother finding anything about it.
I won't.
It's magnificent. But.
Yeah, I won't. But yeah, your husband will despise Hereditary.
Yeah.
It's very it's heavy, man. I mean, even without the horror elements, it's a really heavy movie. The family drama within it is very heavy. But earlier I said something about not believing in ghosts, and I don't, but I should mention that same with my stance on aliens. It's like I'm like this agnostic when it comes to the both of them. Actually, I probably lean more believing in aliens, and I'm probably tipping over that, side of the fence.
He is. He's going real quick, Laurel. Don't let him fool you. He's like, when he brought it up, I'm like, he's this guy, yeah.
The ghost thing, but they're both top topics that really excite me.
Yeah.
And I find really interesting, and the prospect of them both excite me and scare me too. But something about it, I love talking about it, and I think I always try to sway the conversation to aliens or ghosts.
Yeah, nowadays it's always everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up wanting to see a ghost and terrified of ever seeing a ghost. I remember even wanting to see one so bad that I woke up in the middle of the night and I was sleeping on the couch, which my parents never let me do. And there was the hall light was on or something, and it cast these weird shadows. And I opened my eyes just a little bit, and they were full of sleep and stuff. So things were blurry, and I feel like I forced myself to see a white blurry image on at the top of my stairs, just like all my ghost books, where they always had the ghost like floating down the stairs or at the top of the stairs. And so it's like I forced myself to see this so that I could tell my friends, I saw one too, which I never said that, but it's like, I remember that moment thinking, just barely have, when you barely got them open and all the lights and stuff look like just furry balls of light or whatever.
Yeah.
The orbs, dude. Orbs.
It's
Bro.
the orbs.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was doing.
On,
it was like,
Yeah.
It's like, am I seeing ghosts? It's so ridiculous.
I'm a subscriber to Ghost Weekly, and dude, Chad, they're on to you. That's why they're not coming around. They know that you are a skeptic.
Maybe that's a good idea.
Like he's into aliens. He'll blame it on aliens anyway. We're not coming
But
around.
I'll tell you something right now that happened last night. That I saw last night. My son FaceTimes me. He's like, check out these videos I just sent you. These are ripped from his girlfriend's night cam or whatever that they have in their house, in their old house. And so he's like, he's like, I already know you're gonna like try to, what's the word I'm looking for?
Debunk it.
Debunk.
Yes. Yeah. And I said, yeah, you're right. I am. I'm going to work hard at it. So I look at this video, freaking creepy. And I'm watching it, and it's just very quick. What happened was they have these emotion alarms set to their videos, the things in the cameras in their house. I think it's just one camera that they have in the living room, and it goes, it shows the entrance to the kitchen, the going up the stairs, and I think maybe the front door, but it's just this one camera. And her and her dad were home. Her mom was not home. Believe she worked third shift. And at like 3:50, and then at like 5:20, something like that, the motion things went off in the middle of the night, alerting them. I don't know if it alerted them then, or if they checked it and then they saw something. We've got these things here recorded. Let's look at them. And so I saw them, and all you can see is part of on the first one at 3 something, you see part of a tall figure, not real tall, just probably 5 or 6 foot, clearly wearing some kind of like nightgown, but the arm is not there and the leg is very skinny. You can just barely make that out, and it's just the edge of it, and it just goes around like out of the kitchen. It's just the side of it, and then it goes over in the corner, and then 2 hours later, it comes back out.
Oh my
and you can
God.
see it again, and the leg, the bottom of the leg is very thin, and the foot is very thin, and it's very strange looking. But you can barely make out details other than the fact that whatever this is absolutely has a nightgown on. There's no question. But you can't see any limbs, but you can see, like when it turns its foot or whatever, you can see the nightgown kind of like wrap around the thin shin and everything. And
where was it for those 2 hours? What was it doing for 2 hours?
Exactly. I said, what's in that? What's over here? And she said, there's a chair there in the corner. And I was like, oh my gosh. She goes, yeah, it's a rocking chair. I was like, of course it's a freaking rocking chair.
No. Rocking chair. Was it Granny's rocking chair? Dude, I mean, we're like,
Oh God.
come on, man.
I watched it, each one of these videos, they're like 10 seconds long, but those parts are only like 2 seconds, 3 seconds a piece. So I watched them each like 30 times, man. I'm looking at it and I was like, well, I don't know what to tell you. I said, I will say this, and without trying to offend you, when you're presented with something like this, you're faced with either you're just going to totally believe that this is a ghost and believe this person, or the person who's saying this happened is full of crap, or they're crazy. So I was like, and I'm not saying, to his girlfriend, I'm not saying you're lying, you're crazy, but this is just my thought. Like, I don't know what to tell you. If everything you said is true, no one was there. You guys were in bed. These went off. You woke up the next morning and you saw this. I would never sleep in that house again.
Okay.
Because this was really, really
What?
creepy and unsettling. And I went into these videos with a smile on my face, telling my boy, yeah, I'm not going to, I'll tell you exactly what, give you an explanation. I had nothing, man.
Yeah.
And I guess the mom got freaked out when she was there the next day.
Obviously.
And she was like in denial.
Chad.
She was like in denial about this thing. And then every once in a while they'd hear like voices. And I can't remember what, I was half paying attention at that point because I'm still watching this creepy nightgown thing. And
you're adding voices now. Bro.
I should send you guys these videos.
Please do.
Put it on the video here,
see.
man.
Get
permission. Get permission, and we should put it on this video so our viewers can see.
You're right.
What
I will get permission to do that.
Yes.
I would watch that.
They end up moving. Yeah. The mom was like in denial. She didn't really like talking about it. But after they moved, and the daughter, my son's girlfriend, she's in her 20s now. I think this was it was 2018 because there's a stamp on the thing that this happened. She started staying in her friends, didn't want anything to do with staying there. So they eventually moved. And after they moved, then the mom said, because she didn't want to scare her kid any more than she already was, but she's like, that terrified me and I hated staying there after that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do have to show you guys these videos, and hopefully I will be able to put them in the thing because that would be cool. They're freaking
that would
creepy,
be awesome. Dude, we'd be revealing it to the world, bro.
Yeah.
Oh man,
he did try sending it to some kind of like X-Files type thing or whatever, and they're like, I don't know, I don't know really what we can do with this.
I mean, that's tiddlywinks.
It makes sense. I mean, they could have just
this. We're gonna share it on Paleo Cheese. I mean, come on,
Yeah, there we
go. Obviously, this is.
It'd be easy to make a video like that and just send it and go, oh yeah, man, this happened last night at my house. And just total hoax or whatever. But
now I'm always tend to believe that kind of stuff, and with the caveat that, like I said, I've seen things, but I'm also perfectly open to the idea that cross over to some afterlife and they'd be like, wow, you were so full of shit, Hightower. None of that happens. Like, good job. Well, that's a great imagination, but that was not.
Isn't that kind of, I was going to say this earlier. I'm glad you just said that just now, like talking about grief, right? That some of the things that in my own experience, just bringing it back to that, like, in dealing with it, there have been events that have taken place after the fact that were small little things, like the lady that lost the son to suicide that jumped on the casket. She was praying a chaplet and she gave me this chaplet. It's like prayer beads and stuff. Gave it to me because she had this event that took place on her birthday where she asked God, she's like, look, I know I shouldn't test you, but I'm just straight up going to ask you for a sign. I just want to know my son's in heaven, right? She, wants to think this. And she said, I just want a white rose or something like that. And that day, somebody came to her home, and a friend of hers, and she said, hey, and she pulled out these flowers, and it was a big bundle of red roses, right? And she looked at it, and she was kind of shocked. Then she's like, oh, and she kind of inside felt deflated, but she didn't know that girl was coming over. And so she leaned over to smell it and pulled it down, and right smack dab in the middle is a white rose. And she freaked out, and the lady's like, she was really confused, this woman. And she's like, why did you get that? And the lady said, well, there was only one left at the store, and they were selling it like normally they're, for these roses, they'd be like, $2.99 or $3 or something for one. And she's like, but it was like 99 cents. She's like, so I thought it would look cool to have one in the middle of a dozen red roses. And it did. She said it looked awesome. It was really pretty. Well, she told me that story. And like the next day we go to this event and stuff. And it's a memorial, and they're talking about all the kids, and they mentioned my daughter and stuff. And at the end, they were like, yeah, and we have all these flowers. And the whole time I'm looking over and I'm seeing these red and white roses that are like in this little bundle right together in this vase. And I leaned over to my son, and I'm like, dude, as soon as it's over, you run. Like, you get those roses like stat, bro. I said, we are getting those for mama like now. And so he did, and he ran over it, but little things like that I know that some people would say, statistically speaking, it's possible that that's just a coincidence. In fact, it might even be probable that it's a coincidence. And I said, then sue me for thinking it's not. Like, I don't care if in the end, I go up to the great by and by and the Lord's like, hey, look, that was a coincidence, quite frankly. Like,
Yeah,
I wasn't behind that. I'm like, okay, it's not going to faze me any which way. And I'm not basing my beliefs on that stuff. But at the same time, I'm okay with that, And so those little things that I know some people could chalk up to just,
and they do.
and they do. Yeah.
And that's okay, because I think that those moments are for the person who experiences them.
I was just going to say that same thing. You're good. You're good, Laurel. You're awesome. Yeah.
I always think of this when I was a teenager. I had this friend named Bo, and I didn't know him very well, but there's a theater here that does Rocky Horror Picture midnight shows, and we used to love to go to them. And I can't even remember if that's where I met him or at the movie theater I worked. Anyways, he's this great, great guy. And he actually I had some problem with somebody coming to the movie theater bothering me. And he used to come to kind of like keep an eye on me and, that kind of thing. And I moved away to California and I didn't ever see him again. And then when I moved back to Kentucky, someone told me he had passed away from leukemia. And he was, probably 19 at the time. And a number of times I would just think like, I didn't ever, I wasn't really good at expressing like, man, you were a good friend, like I wish I'd said, like, I wish I'd been more expressive about that. And I had said that a few times. So my husband started a new job, this has been like a decade ago now. But he was on speakerphone with me while he was like trying to tell me something. And I hear this thing and he says, oh, that's my coworker, Bo. He wants to say hi. I was like, oh, okay. Hi, Bo. And he said, hey, I just wanted to tell her that I love her, but she knows that. And this is a guy I'd never met in my life. And he's never said anything like that to me since. And I was like, I don't know. I have always believed that was my Bo, just saying hi that way. And I was like, it was odd, and I've told that story to like one other person. They thought I was nuts. And they also thought the Bo guy was weird, but, but I don't know. It's stuff like that. It's like, if you take it that way, then I think that it's done its job.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, I'm so glad that we finished this on ghosts, man. How cool is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And aliens a little bit.
Yeah.
And aliens.
But,
yeah.
Laurel, if you can have the floor, if there's something that you want to talk about that's coming up or website, get people getting your books and paying you some attention and all that kind of stuff, please tell us.
Yeah, it's the normal stuff. You can usually find me on Twitter. I'm at Hightower Laurel. And my website is woefully out of date. But my book Crossroads is available through the normal channels, but also directly from my publisher at Off Limits Press. Just always like to give a shout out to Sam Kolyasnik at Off Limits Press. She does wonderful work, and she is a tireless publisher with a really, really good eye. I have really liked working with Sam. So yeah, Crossroads and Whispers in the Dark if you want something with a little more firepower, but also lots of ghosts. And I'm working on, like I said, the anthology, The Dead Inside, which is identity horror, which maybe sounds a little strange and some people don't know what I mean by that, but I sort of along the lines of like, like when you become a parent and you totally lose who you are, or people who've had to suppress, like if they pass for white and, this is something they haven't necessarily addressed. I've had some conversations with some people, that just and like toxic masculinity, how that affects you and just, I don't know, this identity inside kind of stuff. I think it's kind of ripe, and I'm very excited to read the stories that we've been getting for it. So.
Well, great, man. I hope you get lots of great submissions.
I think we already have. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, I'm so glad that we asked you to come on here, and I thought this is a perfect topic for all of us to discuss. So thanks so much.
Absolutely.
And
thank you for having me on.
I've been wanting to, as you know, I meant to have you on here so long ago, and I felt bad for even saying, I felt like I was just dangling this piece of candy and saying, hey, not that this is some huge joy to be on and like a bucket list thing,
But it is.
You know, just say, what are you talking about, man? It's on a lot of people's bucket list, right? I mean,
just to say, hey, I have you on the show, and then like 4 months later or something, I finally get on here. Maybe it was longer than that. It was a long time. So my apologies.
It's not like the world hasn't been on fire for over a year.
So yeah, Jeremiah, working no one's going to contact us, so don't bother with the email and stuff.
Yeah, don't bother with it, guys. But I'll still throw it out there because we every once in a while, it's still like a dangling chat, right? But no, paleo cheese. It's all paleo cheese, right? With cheese with a Z, PALEOCHEEZE at gmail.com. We also have a Twitter and a Facebook. It's mainly Twitter. We have an Instagram. We haven't really done anything with that one. And of course, Acast. You can find us on YouTube there. And if you comment, we actually have a couple comments, Chad, we got to deal with. We got a couple, man. People have been commenting on some of our stuff there on YouTube, and we're trying to get better about it because
are these comments just telling you to shut up while you're watching Jaws?
One of them, dude. Why can't you just be quiet? And I'm like, well, why can't you just watch, man? Like, you're telling me, you're the one blabbering his mouth during my, reaction video. So, I'm like, it's my first one I've ever done. Give me a break. I don't even know what I'm doing. Make sure you post comments. We would love to engage with you there. And if you have any suggestions, not only for topics, but also for guests and stuff like that, it's an open invitation. We open it up and say, we'd love to hear what you have to say. And if it's good, if it's cream of the crop type stuff, you may find it here on Paleo Cheese.
That'll do it, man.
That's it. Yeah. It's been a good show, Chad.
Jeremiah.
Yeah.
I just sent you the two clips through Facebook Messenger. Laurel, I just sent them to you through Twitter Messenger. The top one is I believe is the first one, I think. There should be timestamp on both of them.
Can't I play it here?
Like sharing it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
oh my
here, hold on, let me see this thing. I gotta see this. Okay, I've already gotten a reaction here from so Laurel is going, oh, dude, all right, it's already creepy, dude. I'm already looking at this. I haven't even pushed play yet. Okay, let's see this. Dude, no. Come on, bro.
There's no arm.
Oh. There's a stuffed rabbit laying on the ground too, and I find that creepy.
Yeah, that's even what's come on.
What's with the stuffed rabbit? All right, let's see it come back.
Okay, yeah. So this thing. Let's see here.
Dude, there is something in that house.
Whoa, dude. I just got the chills for real, man.
Yeah, I told you, man. It's freaking creepy.
Because that is like physical. I mean,
that's not
like.
Yeah.
My first thought was, did somebody sleepwalk?
Yeah,
like that's
what
my
I was
first
thinking
thought
too.
was sleepwalking. But dude, 2 hours, homie.
Yeah.
2 hours.
That's a long time to be just floating around
or rocking in a rocking chair. Yeah.
I get why you watch this like 30 times.
Yeah, because you want to see.
Just keep you're like.
Because that's a being.
Yeah.
I would have never fallen asleep again.
And you can, like I said, you can clearly tell it's a nightgown, but I don't see any like limbs, with the exception of when she's walking toward the chair, you can see the gown kind of wrap around the movement of her shin and then walking away, you can kind of see a foot, which to me looks very thin for a foot.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. No, this is not cool. And here's the thing. Like, it's definitely not like a blur on the camera or a
no.
This is
no.
A being.
No. Yeah.
This is definitely a being.
Oh my
God. What did you do to us, Chad? I got my cam upstairs. I'm gonna be like monitoring the app now. I'm like, oh no.